Maya sat in the far corner of the public library, clutching a worn English dictionary like a lifeline. At just 13, she had fled war in Syria and now found herself in a foreign land, surrounded by unfamiliar sounds and faces. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation, but it all washed over her like noise. The other children laughed, pointed, whispered, but Maya didn't understand their words. She felt invisible, yet painfully exposed. Each day she returned to the same corner, hoping the pages of the dictionary would unlock the world around her. But progress was slow, and the loneliness louder than any silence she'd ever known. That's when Mrs. Brooks noticed her. A retired schoolteacher who volunteered twice a week, she'd seen many children come through those library doors, but something about Maya's eyes held her attention. They weren't just confused, they were tired, longing, but full of something deeper, hope. Without fanfare, Mrs. Brooks sat beside her. No judgment. No pity. Just presence. She gently asked, "Want to read a story together?" Maya looked up, startled. Slowly, she nodded. It was a small question, but for Maya, it opened a door she thought was closed forever. This simple act of kindness wasn't just about learning English. It was the first time someone saw her, not as a burden or a refugee, but as a girl who had something to offer. In that moment, Maya felt something shift inside her. Maybe, just maybe, she could belong here. That afternoon, Maya learned her first real English word, not from the dictionary, but from the heart, together. Every afternoon, Maya returned to her corner in the library, where Mrs. Brooks would be waiting with a gentle smile and a new storybook. They read slowly, The Giving Tree, Charlotte's Web, simple stories with deep meanings. Maya didn't say much. Her vocabulary was still growing, and the words felt heavy on her tongue. But her eyes sparkled with every page, every sentence, as if the stories were watering something inside her that had long been dry. Mrs. Brooks never rushed her. She let Maya linger on the pictures, sound out the words, and laugh softly at the funny moments. Their bond deepened with each story they shared. It wasn't just about learning English anymore, it was about building trust, one sentence at a time. Then, one day, Maya arrived holding something new, a small notebook. She hesitated, then placed it on the table and opened it. Page after page was filled with drawings, sketches of a lonely tree giving away its apples, a tiny pig standing beside a spider's web, a little girl reading under a tree. Mrs. Brooks turned the pages slowly, her eyes misting. There were no words, but Maya had captured the heart of each story with perfect clarity. In those drawings lived her understanding, her feelings, and her voice. Without saying much, Maya had spoken volumes. Mrs. Brooks looked at her, touched her hand, and whispered, "These are beautiful." For Maya, the moment was everything. She couldn't yet express herself in fluent English, but through stories and art, she had found a way to be heard. In that shared silence, two hearts connected. No translation was needed. A month had passed since Maya first picked up a storybook with Mrs. Brooks. Her progress was slow but steady, each new word a tiny victory. One afternoon, Mrs. Brooks gently invited her to take part in the library's weekly story night. "Just one paragraph," she said. Maya's heart sank. The thought of reading in front of others, stumbling, mispronouncing, terrified her. She shook her head, whispering, "I can't." But Mrs. Brooks smiled kindly. "They don't care if you're perfect, they care if it's you." On the night of the event, Maya sat in the second row, clutching her paper like a shield. When her name was called, her legs felt heavy. She walked slowly to the front, her small frame nearly swallowed by the big room. She looked out at the faces. Some strangers. Some familiar. All waiting. With a deep breath, she began. Her voice quivered. She tripped over a few words. Paused too long in places. But she kept going. She read about a boy and his kite. About dreams and the sky. Her accent painted the story with a rhythm that was all her own. When she finished, there was silence for a moment. Then came the applause, soft at first, then stronger. A few people stood. Mrs. Brooks wiped her eyes. Maya blinked in disbelief. No one had laughed. No one had corrected her. They had listened. In that moment, something inside her shifted. She was no longer just the refugee girl. She was Maya, a girl who had spoken and been heard. A girl with a voice. And she would never forget how it felt. Weeks rolled by, and Maya's confidence quietly bloomed. Words that once felt like locked doors were now beginning to open. In her school classroom, she sat near the back, still soft-spoken, but always listening, always learning. Then one day, their teacher gave the class an assignment: write a short story in English. Maya hesitated, then smiled. That night, she filled the pages of her notebook with a tale about a lonely tree who longed to speak to the wind. It tried each day, learning one word at a time from the birds, the leaves, and the rain. And in the end, the tree whispered its first word, and the wind answered. She handed in the story, nervous but proud. The next morning, the teacher stood at the front of the class, holding Maya's paper. "This," she said, "is something special." And then she read it aloud. The classroom fell silent. The words were simple, but the meaning, pure and powerful. When the story ended, the room stayed quiet, not out of boredom, but awe. After class, a girl named Emily walked up to Maya. Her voice was soft. "Your story, it made me cry." She paused. "Can you teach me how to draw like you?" Maya looked up, surprised. She nodded. In that moment, something beautiful happened. Maya, who had once struggled just to speak a single word, was now sharing stories, stories that touched hearts, stories that inspired others. She was no longer just learning English. She was teaching it, through images, through stories, through kindness. And for the first time, Maya didn't feel like the new girl, or the outsider. She felt like she belonged. The sun dipped low over the quiet park, painting the sky in warm gold as Maya sat on a bench beside Mrs. Brooks. In her hands was a well-loved storybook, one they had read together months ago, The Giving Tree. But this time, Maya was the one reading. Her voice was calm, clear, and confident. No hesitations. No stumbling. Every word flowed effortlessly, shaped by the journey they had taken together. Mrs. Brooks listened with quiet pride, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. When the final sentence was spoken, Maya gently closed the book and looked at her mentor. "You didn't just teach me English," she said softly. "You gave me a world." Mrs. Brooks' eyes welled with tears. She reached over and took Maya's hand. "And now," she whispered, "you'll give it to others." They sat in silence, the weight of those words settling between them like something sacred. All around them, children played, birds sang, and the wind rustled the leaves, just like in the stories they used to read. Maya looked out at the world before her, no longer foreign, no longer frightening. It was hers now. Not because someone gave her everything, but because someone believed in her enough to offer a beginning. What had started as a small act of kindness, a simple invitation to read a story, had grown into something far greater. It had changed a life. It had built a future. And now, with every story she would one day tell, Maya would pass on that gift. Not just the language, but the love, the courage, the understanding. A legacy born from the power of a story shared. Maya's journey began in silence, a quiet corner of a library, a foreign land, and a heart full of fear. But through the power of stories and one woman's simple act of kindness, she found not just a language, but her voice. From listening to reading, from drawing to writing, from trembling words to confident expression, Maya's transformation was not just academic, it was deeply human. What Mrs. Brooks offered was more than English lessons. She offered presence, patience, and belief. And in return, Maya blossomed into more than a student. She became a storyteller, a teacher, and a light for others walking similar paths. This is not just a story about learning English. It's a story about being seen. About connection. About how one person's compassion can change the course of another's life. Because sometimes, the most powerful lessons are not found in textbooks, but in the stories we share, the hearts we touch, and the worlds we open, together.